Somehow, in a very short period of time, Monte Games has created two exactly the same tabletop horror RPGs that are completely different. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters, my name is Mr. Trosk, and today I want to talk about two books, namely The Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game, which is a horror tabletop RPG using the Cypher system based on an overly successful podcast of the same name. The other book that I want to talk about is the Magnus Archives, the role-playing game, which is a horror tabletop RPG utilizing the Cypher system based on an overly successful podcast with the same name. Now, you might have heard about both of these. I've done reviews and character creation videos and other videos on both of these RPGs on my channel, and I get questions a lot from people like, which one do you prefer? Which one is better? What is different between them? Do I need the rulebook, the Cypher system rulebook to play them? And all of those questions. Now, I just want to do a video. This is not like a super deep dive into all of the mechanics and all of the differences and all of the nitty-gritty type things that you might find different in these RPGs. It's just a general thought video that might give you a little bit of guidance on how to decide which RPG of these two to pick up, because both of these are absolute masterpieces. Now, the first thing that I want to get out of the way about these is maybe the most important, and that is, how are they alike? Now, I've already said twice or three times in this video that they're both based on a very successful podcast of the same name, and that is such a freaking smart move by Monte Games. They do a Kickstarter for these books and they raise like over $1 million or that kind of money, which is like ridiculous, because these podcasts are very popular on Spotify or wherever, and they're really good, like especially this one. Personally, I'm a bigger fan of this one as this one, but that's just personal taste. Quality-wise, they are incredible. So they have their fan base, so in the first day of funding, they get funded, and then, yeah, it's a snowball effect. Really, really cool. Now, something really important that needs to be stated about how they are the same is they both have everything you need to start playing. And that is the main thing about the Cypher system that I really like. Monte Games often print books, RPGs, with their Cypher system rules in the book. You don't need any other book than one of these. For example, you can have the Cypher system, you can buy the Cypher system rulebook, the red one right there, and then buy the Cypher system bestiary or one of the genre books, the white genre books. The white genre books never have the Cypher system rules explained because they are kind of like add-ons to the Cypher system rulebook, but for one particular genre, right? But when you call something its own RPG, you also have to have your own rules. So what both do is they both utilize the Cypher system rules explained in these books, but in a way that the rules make sense for the setting and for the horror RPG, and also adapted for the horror RPG. Especially, like, this one is mainly just Cypher system, but with like different types, but everything works like the Cypher system works. If you've been playing fantasy in the Cypher system, 90% of what you're doing here is exactly the same, just with like different vibes and different classes and different weapons and that kind of stuff, but mathematically and crunchy, it's basically the same. The Magnus Archives, on the other hand, uses a little bit more of their version from the Cypher system. It uses the stress system, which I have a completely separate video on, but I will touch upon that in a bit. So that is how they are the same. Now, how are they still also maybe also the same? They both are incredibly big books. This is 380 pages, and this is probably something in the line of, I think this might be 400 pages. 410 pages of absolute masterfully written. I still don't know how Monte Games, how they keep spitting this type of stuff out. It is a Cypher system book at its fullest. If you know how a Cypher system book is laid out, you know what I mean. It is always like the main text is right here, main text right here, and then everything they refer to in for example, this block of text, they refer to like one or two things. They are always here with a page number for you to flip to know what they're talking about. And I've had a lot of comments on my channel where people say like, I cannot believe how easy to use Monte Games Cypher system books are for how big they are. These feel more like a PDF with a Ctrl F, a search function, then they feel like a physical book, because every time you read something and then, oh, here they talk about Tennessee, which is a place, right? It's a real place, Tennessee. But they have that in like these brownish letters. I don't know if you can see that. But then you're like, oh, what was Tennessee again? Oh, Tennessee, there's more information about Tennessee right here. Tennessee, page 226. So you just go to page 226, and I'm super slow with numbers. Bam, Tennessee, right there. It's this vagina-shaped little bit of land, and yeah. So that is how the Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game and the Magnus Archives are essentially the same in their design philosophy. They go off of something that's already super popular, has a fan base. They create an incredible product for it, raise a lot of money for it, and then start selling it as an RPG that you can play that ties into the podcast, which is absolutely cool. But there are, of course, differences, and they both have their own right of existence. Oh, and other stuff where they're alike. So they all have the cipher system rules. They all have their own types, descriptors, foci in the book, their own items in the book, weapons in the book, monsters in the book, mechanics in the book to play set tabletop RPG that you choose to play. So everything is in here. But also there is a player's guide for both of these where they literally just reprint everything for the players that's in here and just put it in a player's guides. And there are free previews to both of these books. You can click the links in the description below. If you then decide to pick up one of these, it's an affiliate link and I make a couple of dollars from that sale, basically. Now, everything from here on that I will talk about in this video is completely and utterly my opinion and my the way I see it and I interpret the books when I read the books and when I play the games. I have experience with both of these games, and this is just the way I feel about it. I might be, to your opinion, be completely wrong about stuff. Put it in the comments below, completely destroy me. I don't care, I will respond, and you're entitled to your opinion as I am entitled to my opinion, and let's have a discussion about it, because I love to have discussions about this kind of stuff. Now, in what way are these not alike? Well, first of all, we need to talk about the setting, because the setting of these is completely different. Old Gods of Appalachia is actually based on a real place. Well, the Magnus Archives is also kind of like based in the real world, but it is not the real world, because it has like elements of, let's just start with the Old Gods. I'm like confusing myself by doing this video for some reason. I don't know. Old Gods of Appalachia is an RPG, horror RPG, based in the Appalachian region in the United States of America. A region that intrigues me incredibly. As soon as I started reading this RPG, I drive this old-timer van, an old firefighter's van, 43 years old. It's my daily driver. It's a Volkswagen Vanagon, you call it in America. T3 van, air-cooled, everything, completely fixed it up myself. And I want to actually put it on a container ship, put it in a harbor near Appalachia, then drive all the way across Appalachia, visit all of these crazy places and talk to the people who live there, and then just go back to Belgium, to Europe, right? Because it really 100% totally intrigues me. I am in love with the setting just from reading this book and started listening to the podcast. The podcast, it really, damn, there are some horror elements to it that I'm not a big fan on horror when it comes to the receiving end. I like to tell horror tales, but I don't like to receive or listen to horror tales. I cannot watch the first Alien movie, for some reason, or Jaws. I love the movie as a movie, but I cannot watch it, right? Old Gods of Appalachia is set in the Appalachian region, and it is everything in here is kind of based on actual folklore, stories that and legends and that kind of stuff actually existing in the real world. So there are stories in the real world about haunted mines. There are stories in the real world about children disappearing, and there are stories in the real world about below the Appalachian region there are ancient beings, and if you drill too deep, these ancient beings will awaken. They will sing songs, and then people will go into the mines and it will disappear. The people will go crazy in the vicinity of this mine where this thing has woken up. All kinds of that, really, really horror horror, kind of like, I don't know, I'm just gonna call out some things, I might be completely wrong, but I get like Stranger Things vibes from this, maybe like even the new Ghostbusters movie, some Goonies, like really, sometimes really dark, but all the time like really boots on the ground, dirty adventure. It's a cipher system, so it is a narrative game. Inherently, it's a narrative game just because it's based on a cipher system. But compared to the Magnus Archives, it feels a little bit more centered around a little bit more fighting, a little bit more combat, a little bit more like it's basically adventuring like you do in like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, like dungeon crawling and figuring stuff out and extracting really weird ghosts from people and then defeating them, that kind of stuff, but just in an Appalachian setting based in the early 1900s. So 1920, 1930. You could also place this like in the middle of like when World War II is happening or whatever, or even earlier, but that's where this game is set. And that is basically in really, really vague terms what Old Gods of Appalachia is. Then there's the Magnus Archives role-playing game, and it is completely different in the way what its setting is all about. The Magnus Archives role-playing game is a setting where you go into, like, I want to say modern, London kind of feeling, but you can place it anywhere in the world basically. But also it, I would say it would work best in like the early 2000s. Not your players shouldn't have like a smartphone iPhone thingy, but they should at the same time have a way of communicating with each other, that kind of thing, right? It is this really cool in between technology kind of place where this is set the best to my personal opinion. Now the idea is that there is an institute, the Magnus Institute, and this institute collects voice messages from people who went through, like voice messages literally on like a tape recorder, from people who've been through something supernatural, and they go to the police or they go to whatever and nobody believes them, or they say they're crazy or whatever, and these voice messages are recorded on a tape recorder and then stored into an archive, which are called the Magnus Archives in the Magnus Institute. And your players, the player characters, are basically researchers or personnel from the Magnus Institute, or friends of hired friends who know something about something, I don't know, and they go into that archive, pick out one of these voice messages, listen to it, and try to figure out what happened, and try to save the person that is trapped inside the body of a demon, or has a demon trapped inside their body, or they go and get closure for somebody who lost a relative, and they don't know how they lost that relative, but they're sure they were eaten by, I don't know, a weird tentacle creature somewhere in the forest, but then the players go in and they see it's actually a tree that's alive, or something like that. That is the Magnus Archives, and it is completely different in its setting because it is way more focused around the investigation part of the game. For me, whenever I read this and play this, it feels much more roleplay heavy and less mechanic heavy. They're both the cipher system. So that is the same, but instead of like hit points and that kind of stuff, the Magnus Archives uses a stress system that I have a completely separate video on. And the stress system is an incredibly clever way of having a sort of hit points system where it's not hit points, you get stress. And the more stress you get, the worse things are going to go for you. So for example, you have a few stress levels, which means that if you then need to run away from something, you might have a harder time running away. You might be stumbling over tables or over chairs or hitting the wall, your face against the wall from pure stress, pure panic, right? And that is how the mechanic works in the Magnus Archives, but also too much stress will eventually kill you. So in the Magnus Archives, it is really smarter for player characters often to not go into combat and to find themselves a way around having to deal with like certain enemies or certain situations because they really cannot use the stress because for me, this is really one of those games, if you had an evening where where you just like play one session. I know it's a big book for a one-shot. It's not a one-shot. But I mean, for a one-shot, this would work incredibly well because it can become so deadly so quick. As long as you don't have any stress, everything will go fine. But as soon as the first levels of stress are coming into like 1 or 2 party members, shit can hit the fan really quickly. Now, another really important distinction between the Magnus Archives compared to the Old Gods of Appalachia is where the Old Gods of Appalachia just feels a little bit more boots on the ground, adventure, dungeon crawly, then this one is more investigation type. Outside of like the fear mechanic, they have the entities, and the entities are all kinds of fears that people can have, and they're called like the buried, the corruption, the end, the eye, the dark, the slaughter, the flash, the desolation, the spiral, the lonely, the stranger, the web, the extinction, and the vast. And these are all entities that actually have almost a mind of their own, and they get stronger the more people fear this type of fear. They're all based on a fear. The empty is based on the fear of being alone in an empty room, while, the buried is the fear of actually being buried alive or being too close to each other in like a freaking elevator, that kind of stuff, right? And every monster in the game, in the adventures that are in here, that you encounter, I'm just gonna flip through to a bunch of monsters. Like almost all the monsters in here are basically an embodiment of one of these entities. Like for example, there is the Bone Turner. The Bone Turner is it's a stat block for the Bone Turner, really, yeah. And then the related entity is the Flash. And so this entire thing, this entire RPG is basically based around that idea. It's a really important aspect where these entities are all trying to get stronger and get more followers, basically, because as soon as you fear something, that entity kind of becomes stronger, and it is all based around that investigation. But at the same time, you're supposed to be like really, really scared as a player. Even at moments, you're just really scared of more of this suggestive horror, to my opinion. Like, for example, with the movie Jaws, which should be like an embodiment of, I don't know, the slaughter or the flesh or something like that. So the shark from Jaws is basically in this game would be an embodiment of like the flesh or the slaughter or something like that. And the fear mechanic and the suggestive nature of it, like there's more moments that you know the shark is there but you're not seeing it, is what makes you scared. Compared to the fear mechanic that kind of replaces hit points in this game. Makes it a really special game, told in a really, really special way, and it goes away from the cipher system more than the Old Gods of Appalachia. And I can keep talking about these two for ages upon ages. They're both masterpieces. They're both for a slightly different audience, to my opinion. So we're already like almost 20 minutes, if it's not longer, into the video. So let me just kind of summarize what I've been talking about. So for me, in general, Old Gods of Appalachia is a role-playing game set in the Appalachian region in the United States of America, based on actual folklore, actual stories that are told about and inside the Appalachian region. It's all based around like generations, going from one generation to the other, and family and that kind of stuff. And it is a cipher system RPG where the cipher system is just rewritten mostly for this particular RPG. So where the cipher system rulebook is just more for like general stuff, you can play fantasy with that, science fiction with that. This is the exact same thing, but it's all about playing in and around the Appalachian region and the Old Gods of Appalachia setting. Basically, it's more boots on the ground. It's more going inside the forest and trying to find what's out there, who took the missing child, it's going inside the mine to find like what ancient beast has been awakened due to the drillings or due to the explosives that they used inside those mines. That kind of stuff is Old Gods of Appalachia. And the Magnus Archives is more for people who are more looking for a even more narrative role-playing game, because both are inherently narrative, because they use the cipher system, which is just a narrative system. But this is more narrative even. Like, combat is further apart, it's more investigation, more talking to NPCs. It's more, it has these mechanics that will instill fear in you, where this is an RPG with a lot of like wicked and crazy horror. You can make a slasher horror out of this, it's suggestive horror out of this, it's just like proper damn horror, where this is more like this is more about avoiding horror, basically. That's it. That's actually it. This is horror, and this is trying to avoid horror. That's the video. I've been talking for 20 minutes just for nothing. This is for avoiding horror, because everything in here is designed, like all of the mechanics, they move more away from the cipher system, and they implement their own mechanics on top of the cipher system to make this more, that players will start investigating more, and yeah, horror is just more suggestive. I don't know what else to say. It's really hard to talk about these two. When you read both of them, they're both completely different RPGs, but in essence, they're also completely the same. But also, they are completely not the same in essence. Like, in essence.